Hello everyone, in this video I'll be doing a tier list ranking the best gloves or handwear in Baldur's Gate 3 on a tier list. Now, this is the biggest tier list that I've done yet. There is 69 different options. That's a ton. So I'll be breaking them down, talking about the benefits of each and ranking the best of them. So the first thing that we got is the Brain Drain gloves. So what happens with these is when you inflict psychic damage, the target gets mental fatigue for 2 turns. So that gives them a -1 penalty to wisdom, intelligence, and charisma saving throws. And if they fail a saving throw, they take 1d4 psychic damage. This could be good on like a Shadow Blade build, but overall it's not that great. So I'm just going to put them into the C tier for now, but it could move around. I may adjust these as we go on. But next we got the Dark Justiciar gauntlets, and these are actually pretty good because they add additional 1d4 of necrotic damage to your attack rolls. And what's nice about that is if you get a critical hit off, that doubles the damage, so it'll give you an extra damage die there. But these are gone in the Gauntlet of Shar, and they're actually a really good set of items, or a really good set of gloves early on in the game. I would put them probably B to A tier. We do get better versions of them a little bit later on, but overall, an additional 1d4 damage is really great, so I'm putting them in the A tier. Next, we got the Fleet Fingers. These are pretty cool because once per turn, when you dash or take a similar action, you can jump without using your movement speed and without using a bonus action. These are actually pretty good because that's actually a big bonus to just your overall mobility, and not using up your movement speed is pretty big. So I'd have to say the Fleet Fingers are probably got B to A tier. I might put them in A tier, move the Dark Justiciar down because there is a better version of that. But yeah, being able to jump without a bonus action and without using your movement speed is huge. Use these on a character that has high strength and they're going to be able to jump around everywhere. Now, I do have some of these to show off and give you like an appearance, a little bit of a look at what they look like on characters. So I have my character here with the reviving hands, but I'll be going over some of them. Like, some of them do have a really cool, unique look. So the Gloves of the Belligerent Skies there is probably one of my favorites, but we'll be getting to those in a moment. So with this tier list, we got a lot of options to go through. And the next one that we got are the Gloves of Archery. So you gain proficiency with longbows and short bows. In addition, your ranged attacks will deal an additional 2 damage. That's not a bad bonus. Typically, if you want proficiency with a weapon, you should just take that class. Like a single level dip into Fighter or War Cleric would give you those. So it's okay. The additional 2 damage is nice. So anytime you can add a damage rider, that's great. And if you use this alongside the Ballast Armor, that's an additional 4 damage because you're going to give a vulnerability to piercing damage. So those are B to probably, I would say, B tier, yeah. Additional 2 damage is always really nice. But next we got the Gloves of the Bane. I guess these are the Gloves of Archery. Next is the Gloves of Baneful Smite. So or Baneful Striking. So with these, whenever you deal a weapon attack, the target receives a 1d4 penalty to its saving throws against the next spell. That's actually pretty good because if you got a martial class, you can run in with them first. Hopefully they have alert to go first. Hit them with this, and then they have a 1d4 penalty to a saving throw. So then you can have your sorcerer or wizard drop a hold person. And what's also nice about these is you get them early on. So I want to put them in the A tier because that is just a useful thing to have early on when you're not going to be having a very high spell save DC. So yeah, they're A tier. Could be B tier though too, especially later on when it starts to fall off in usefulness. But losing a bit of, or being able to give a saving throw benefit to a caster is really good. Next, we got the Gloves of the Belligerent Skies. That's what I'm wearing on my character right now. So they are a very flashy looking pair of gloves. What I like about them, their benefits. This is the best item for a reverberation build. So when the wearer deals thunder, lightning, or radiant damage, they inflict 2 turns of reverberation on the target. These go really well with the Boots of Stormy Clamor because if you're like a sorcerer and you cast something that does lightning damage, thunder, or even radiant, you'll also apply ability drain. So the Boots of Stormy Clamor give 2 stacks of reverberation. This will give 2 stacks, and then you get 4 stacks just from 1 spell. This is S tier. I think the Gloves of the Belligerent Skies is one of the best. The Belligerent Sky gloves are just incredible. So I have to say S tier because it's just so beneficial for a number of reverberation builds. If you haven't used one before, try it out. It's super useful. For those of you that don't know, reverberation gives a -1 penalty to strength, dexterity, and constitution saving throws, which are pretty common ones. For example, Fireball is a dexterity saving throw. And when you get 5 or more turns of reverberation stacked up, the target takes 1d4 of thunder damage, and they have to succeed a 10 constitution DC saving throw, or they become knocked prone. So if you have like Spirit Guardians on, you have these gloves, and someone walks up to you, they can be knocked prone and end their turn. So these are a definite S tier option and super useful for a variety of characters. It's kind of funny because they're an uncommon type item, so Yeah, for being uncommon, they're extremely good, and you can get them really early on in Act 1. So it's at the Kresh where there's a lot of great items. And while I'm on the topic, I guess we'll talk about the Gloves of Dexterity later. That's also an S tier. But next we got the Gloves of Hail of Thorns. So these are okay. It just gives you a level 1 casting a Hail of Thorns. It recharges on short rest. That's D tier. Hail of Thorns is like an okay spell at best, but yeah, not super worth using up your glove slot for, especially when there's so many of them. Next, we have the Gloves of Heroism. So when you use your Channel Oath spells, you gain Heroism, which will give you the ability to not be frightened and also get 5 temporary health. That's also not like super great. It could be good on early on in the game. It might be pretty nice on your Paladin, but it's just not super useful when there's so many other options out there. Like, it's probably even better just to apply Bane on a target instead of giving the extra 5 temporary health. I'm going to put it in the D tier. I just don't think they're that great. So, yeah. Next, we got the Gloves of the Growling Underdog. So the wearer gains advantage on melee attacks when there's 2 or more foes surrounding it. That is really good because if you got a thief around and they are trying to do a sneak attack, if there's 2 targets there, they now have advantage. So these are probably A tier, I would say, just giving yourself advantage. It's also good on like a barbarian or even a fighter if they want to go in and cleave multiple targets. They're going to have a higher hit chance with that. And you're typically going to be surrounded by 2 or more foes as a frontliner, so they work great on pretty much anyone except spellcasters or ranged targets. So, yeah. Next, we got the Gloves of Thievery. These give you advantage on sleight of hand checks, which that's nice. But I feel like this is also D tier. You could just put it on, take it off, put it on, take it off if you really wanted to. But yeah, you're likely going to be passing most sleight of hand checks later on in the game. So yeah, not that great. But next we got these are the Herbalist Gloves. So whenever you heal a target that is poisoned, they're no longer poisoned. Now, I want you to think back. How many times have you been poisoned in the game? Probably not very frequently. So, D tier, because getting poisoned is not super common. Although it is difficult. If you're poisoned, you get disadvantage on attack rolls and ability checks. But lesser restoration, any type of spell, it's just not common enough to find. Don't find it that beneficial. But next, we got the Hellrider's Pride. Now, this is a weaker version of something we have better later on. And with these, when you heal another creature, they get resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage dealt by weapon attacks. So that is huge. You also get this in Act 1. That's really great. It's free Blade Ward on your heal. If you have Mass Healing Word from a Cleric, you can heal everyone and apply Blade Ward to everyone, making them take half physical damage. A tier. That is just seriously a very good thing to have early on in the game. However, there is a better set of gauntlets that give this plus Death Ward later on, so stay tuned for that. But next, we got the Icarus Gloves. Now, this is kind of cool. This is specific to if you're doing an acid build. So when you deal acid damage, you inflict noxious fumes on the target, which is like a little area gas cloud that deals an additional 1d4 damage. It's in a 3-meter radius. You will get hit with this yourself if you don't have resistance to acid, but there is also another item that will give you resistance to acid damage. I'm going to say they're B tier because it is kind of fun if you got a cleave build and you have if you have the ring that applies acid, 2 points of damage to all your attacks. You can actually proc this every time you attack, so acid builds are kind of interesting. I'm going to put it in the B tier. Next, we got the Luminous Gloves. Now, these are also really, really great. So when the wearer deals radiant damage, the target receives 2 turns of Radiating Orb, and they also get +1 to strength saving throws. So you can also get these pretty early on in Act 2. What is great about this, Radiating Orb completely shreds Act 2, and also a Radiating Orb / Reverberation build is actually really good. So the Luminous Gloves, I would probably say, are high A tier. I'm going to put them in the S tier for now. We'll reevaluate later on, but giving a -2 to attack rolls when you deal radiant damage is massive. What's really nice about this is if you have a Cleric with Spirit Guardians, that'll proc it. If you also have a Paladin with a Smite, that will proc it. If you have a Cleric Paladin and they run up, afflict them with Spirit Guardians and smite them, and if you're using a radiant weapon, there's the Sacred Spiral, which will also give you radiating orbs. This becomes 5 stacks immediately, -5 to attack rolls. You're likely, with a higher armor class, not getting hit. So these are underrated. I recommend that anyone gives these a shot because you'll probably like them. They're pretty good. Next, we got the Knuckle Gloves. So this gives you a free casting of Knock and +1 to sleight of hand. Also, another thing that's probably B tier. or D tier, you would cycle these on just to use knock and then take them off. That's its really only use. Knock is a great spell, but also you could have a wizard prepare it and use it and take it off if you really wanted to. So this is easily replaceable with knock being so common, but yeah, I'll put the D tier. Next, we got the Reason's Grasp. So, when the wearer chooses to end their rage, they gain 15 temporary health points. That's okay. 15 temporary health is great, especially if you got a barbarian that's about to go down. It can be useful. This is also the only set of gloves that has this appearance in the game, so that is also cool. But C tier, it's just not incredibly good, so yeah, we'll go with that. Next, we got the Arcanic Gloves. So, whenever you deal fire damage, you gain 2 turns of heat. So, when you have heat, you take 1d4 fire damage, but you can use heat convergence, and then it uses up all your heat to deal additional fire damage on your next spell or attack. That's okay. Fire damage is nice, and especially if you build around it, it can be cool, but I'm going to put these in the C tier. Unless you're resistant to fire, you don't want to be taking that extra damage yourself. So I have to say it's probably just C tier at best. I think there's better options out there for damage. So yeah, we'll go with that because it's just not as good as some of the others in this game, I don't think. So yeah. But next we got the Winter's Crutches. So this is a set that I really like. These are underrated. So what the Winter's Crutches do. So when you deal cold damage, the target gets 2 turns of Encrusted with Frost, which gives them disadvantage on dexterity saving throws. So you can kind of follow that up with a fireball. If you're a sorcerer, you can do an ice storm and then also hit them with a fireball, and then they have disadvantage on the saving throw. So that's actually really good. When there's 7 or more turns remaining of Encrusted with Frost, they must make a 12 DC saving throw or take 1 to 4 cold damage. In addition, they become frozen. When they're frozen, they can't move, they can't do anything, and they are vulnerable to bludgeoning, thunder, and force damage, which are pretty common. And yeah, that is really good. They can't take their turns, so highly recommend the Winter's Crutches. I actually think this is another item that could potentially be S tier. If you got a cold build, this is the best in slot for any type of cold damage. I'm a big fan of cold damage, so I'm going to put it in the S tier, but it could be A tier. Encrusted with Frost is a great condition, and it also counts as a condition applied, so if you boost the Stormy Clamor, you also give them Reverberation. So, high A tier to S tier. I'm going to put it probably A. We'll put it A tier. Just someone will disagree if I put it in the S tier. But next, we got a lot of options here. We'll go with the Bracers of Defense. So, with these, what you get is if you don't have an armor equipped or shield equipped, you get a +2 to armor class. Now, as a barbarian, this could be useful because you're going to wear clothing and not typically use a shield, but you can also use a shield as a barbarian. Now, the monk, their unarmored defense doesn't give them an increase. Like, if they wear a shield, they lose their armor class. So this can be all right. The Bracer to Defense is pretty good. +2 armor class is always nice, but I find it gets outclassed pretty early on. I'll say the Bracer Defense is probably a B tier. They're alright, just not the best in slot. But next we got the Unlucky Thief's Gloves. So, this you get from the Genie in Act 3, and it's similar to the other Thieves' Gloves, but it has a cool little interaction. So anytime that you steal, you get a piece of charcoal. So, kind of like Santa delivers charcoal to naughty children. But if you do it 20 times, you get a coal bucket, and then it burns you. D tier, obviously, it's more so a joke weapon than anything. But if you really want to stack them, you can get a cape or a cloak from the Genie as well that won't let you get burned, so you can apply both these at the same time. Steal your Heart's Content. +2 to Sleight of Hand's not even huge, though. But, yeah, next we got the Cerebral Citadel Gloves. So this is an illithid item, and you charm or frighten a creature to gain a 1d4 bonus to attack rolls and saving throws. So, yeah, if you charm creatures a lot, like the illithid ability to charm, you could use that alongside them. And it also gives you a +1 to saving throws. Getting a 1d4 bonus to attack rolls is really nice. I'm going to put it probably in the C tier. There is some use if you like to charm targets, but this is only applicable to any builds that are focusing on like using the illithid ability. So, yeah, I'll probably put it there. Next, we got the Crater Flesh Gloves. These are really good. Actually, this is the Crater Flesh Gloves. What is great about the Crater Flesh Gloves is, so when you deal a critical hit, you deal an additional 1d6 force, the best damage type in the game, force damage. So 1d6 damage, but when you hit a critical hit, you get an extra damage die. So this actually becomes 2d6. This is much better than it looks, honestly. I'm going to put it in the B tier. It's great. A tier if it's on a crit fishing build, but force damage is awesome, and be able to get an easy application of that is really nice. So yeah, I'm gonna put it there because I just think that that is super useful to have, and yeah, something you definitely want to get applied to the target. But next we got this Cinder Snap gloves. So this gives protection from missiles for every short rest. So protection from missiles lasts for 2 turns. You can only get it from 2 different items in the game, but it's going to give disadvantage on ranged weapon attacks against you, and they will do half damage. That is pretty good, but it's not something that I find very useful. There's also the gloves of missile snaring, which I think is a little bit better, so I'm just going to put it into the D tier because there is better options available. So yeah, that is one thing about that. Next, we got ourselves the Daredevil gloves. These are honestly really good because you get a +1 to spell save DC, or spell attack rolls, so your things like Scorch and Array will be more likely to hit, and that's really nice. But the big benefit is you get the Daredevil proximity, so your ranged spell attacks are made as melee spells. If you apply this, you can toggle it on or off to be able to make your spells as melee attacks. This is A tier. Being able to cast your spells at close range is really good for a variety of builds, especially Warlocks, because they're going to be getting in close to do attacks with their, Pact of the Blade. And then you can also use your Eldritch Blast with that. So it's pretty good. I would say it's a A tier. Could be S tier on certain builds, but I'll put it in the A tier. But next we got ourselves the Dark Displacement gloves. I'm going to move that up there. So you get a +1 bonus to attack rolls when throwing, and you may swap positions with the target if they fail a dexterity saving throw. That is an interesting one. I'm not going to rank it high because +1 to attack rolls when throwing is okay, but there's other items that'll benefit throwing a bit more. And with this, it's kind of, I don't know if you'd want to be having a mixed chance of being able to change positions. Let me know in the comments if there's a really good usage for this. I would love to hear, because I feel like this would be cool to build around, but I don't love unpredictable things. Like, it's fun to have unpredictable classes like the Wild Magic Sorcerer, but this is just a little bit unpredictable for my tastes. But we got ourselves next the Dark Justiciar Gauntlets. So this is the same as the previous ones that I talked about, but these actually get a nice benefit. So it's the same 1d4 necrotic on all weapon attacks. So put this on your fighter. It also gives you +1 to strength saving throws, but it also gives you the Beckoning Darkness, level 4 spell as a bonus action. So if the target's in any type of darkness, they take 2d4 necrotic damage. So as a bonus action, being able to do that is not bad. An additional maybe up to 16 extra damage is kind of nice. I'm going to put these in the A tier. They're better than the other Dark Justiciar Gauntlets, but a 1d4 addition of damage to all your attacks is nice. There's only a few that work on a lot of weapons, so they're some of the best items in this game because adding extra damage riders is always a good thing. But next we got ourselves the flawed Helldusk gloves. So another thing that adds extra damage. There is the actual Helldusk gloves I'll be talking about a bit later on, but the flawed ones. So what these do is they deal additional 1d4 fire damage. And if you're unarmed, they do 1d4 necrotic, plus they can apply bleeding to the target for 2 turns. Now, bleeding does 2 slashing damage every turn, which is kind of nice. And also gives you a +1 to strength saving throws. These, by definition, are pretty solid gauntlets. Lesser Infernal Touch is obviously the better ones. I'm probably going to put them... I'll put them in the A tier, probably a little bit lower down in the A tier. They're great for additional damage. Anytime you can add damage riders, that's nice. They're good even if you want to punch people and apply bleed. So, yeah, if you got multiple different options with that, I think they're pretty solid overall. Battle Mage gloves. So, gloves of the Battle Mage's power. This gives you the Battle Mage's power, which your weapon attack rolls, when they inflict a condition, you gain Arcane Acuity. So that gives you a +1 to spell attack rolls and spell save DC. This is one of the best things you can get on your character, and it also gives you a +1 to strength saving throws. So the Battle Mage's power works great on like a Paladin. I would say they're probably B tier because they are great, but some other items are just a little bit better, I would say. So yeah, I'll put it into the B tier, but getting Arcane Acuity is massive, and that just allows you to land your spells a little bit better. So if you're a Paladin and you inflict Radiating Orbs a few times, you'll get Arcane Acuity built up, and then you can cast Hold Person with like a +10 to your spell save DC if you got a lot of stacks. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, that's that. Next we got the Gloves of Cinder and Sizzle. So there is 5 different gloves for monks that'll add additional damage to their unarmed attacks. So this does 1d4 of fire damage, and it gives you level 3 Scorching Ray. So it's 4 beams. Not bad. I'll put it in the B tier. These gloves are nice to use, but fire damage is not as good as some of the other damage types, so I'll just put it in the B tier. they're useful, but there's one that's way better than all of them. So yeah, it just makes them all look not as good in comparison. But yeah, we got some other really great ones here. We got the so these are the gloves of crushing. So the wearer gains a 1 plus bonus to unarmed attack rolls, and their unarmed attacks deal an additional 2 bludgeoning damage. That's also B tier. Probably better than the other gloves, because getting a +1 to your attack rolls means you're going to hit your shots more likely. That shouldn't be an issue, though, if you're using Tavern Brawler, because that's going to add double your strength modifier to attack rolls. That's really good. But 2+ damage is guaranteed damage versus a 1d4. And it's bludgeoning damage, which is a decent damage type. It's physical, but decent. So yeah, I would say they're not bad. Not the best, but they're also just not bad. Next, we got the Gloves of Missile Snaring. So you can intercept a missile from a ranged weapon attack with a reaction, reducing their damage by 1d10 plus your dexterity modifier. That's pretty good. I would say they're probably B tier. You get them very early on. So you can get them in Act 1, sold by Aaron in the Druid Grove. I would recommend just grabbing them and putting on your Cleric early game if you don't have the Hellrider. I guess you can get the Hellrider's Pride early in the game too. Yeah, get these, save your butt. Put them maybe on a rogue, because the dexterity modifier beneficial to that. So yeah, these are actually really good. Next, we got the gloves. Where is it? The gloves of the automaton. So these, no, this is the gloves of the automaton. These give you you're considered a construct, and your attack rolls have advantage, and you have resistance to lightning damage. That's honestly pretty good. But becoming a construct is interesting because it changes, like, I guess a lot of different things. So you can use the Light of Creation safely with these, because that's a weapon that's going to deal lightning damage on yourself as well. So a chance to stun yourself, so you won't get stunned with that. You can't get benefited from healing spells with this glove on, though, so that's unfortunate. And the only other unfortunate thing is your attack rolls do have advantage, but it doesn't actually give you the ability to do sneak attack as a rogue. So I would say they're probably 8. I don't know. That's pretty good. Turning into a construct has a lot of downsides. I might just put them in the C tier. Someone let me know if there's a cool build or anything that can be done to kind of maximize the benefits. Advantage on attack rolls is nice, but you can't do sneak attacks with it. So that just kind of loses a little bit of benefits there. But yeah, that's not a bad one overall. But next, we got ourselves the Gloves of the Balanced Hands. So these are pretty cool. This gives you 2 weapon fighting, so it's a free fighting style. That's great if you're a rogue who doesn't get fighting styles, because it adds your ability modifier to the damage of your offhand attacks. I would say that's probably A tier. I do use these quite frequently, especially if it's a class that, let's say you want to use 2 weapons, but you also want to use the defense +1 armor class. You can get it with these. +1 armor class is really nice, so yeah. It's beneficial for anyone that even has a fighting style, because it frees up one of your fighting styles. So you could take archery, or you could take armor class, etc. Next, we got the Gloves of the Duelist. So these are an interesting set because it gives you the dueling gloves benefit. So when only holding 1 weapon in your main hand and nothing in your free hand, you gain a +2 bonus to attack rolls. So that can be good with the Duelist Prerogative, which is another item that requires you to only have a weapon in your main hand and nothing in the offhand. I'm going to put it in the C tier, though, because typically you want to have either a shield or an offhand weapon most times. So in those times, this becomes a lot better. So yeah. Next, we got one of my favorite gloves of the monk variety. So this is the Gloves of Uninhibited Kashigo. So we deal an additional 1d4 damage with throw attacks and attacks made with improvised weapons. So these are great on like a barbarian. I would say it's probably about a B tier option. Not the best, but they're fun. Giving her additional damage on throws is really good, so works great on throwing builds. Highly recommended on a throwing build. Next, we got, this is another glove that looks unique with Janel's Gloves. So when the wearer becomes blinded, paralyzed, or poisoned, they automatically cast Lesser Restoration on themselves and a +1 to saving throws. That's not bad. Getting blinded, paralyzed, or poisoned, you're not going to get poisoned often. Paralyzed, sometimes, but blinded, probably the most frequent. I'll probably put them in the B tier. Like, that's useful, but not super common that you'll get a huge benefit out of them. I feel like there is just better options out there, especially since there's so many freaking gloves. But next we got the Martial Exertion Gloves. These have a very cool benefit. So with these, you can take 6d6 piercing damage. Don't wear ballast armor. You don't want to double that. But 6d6 piercing damage. And you gain an additional attack per turn. And you double your movement speed. You can do this every short rest. The damage you take, is a lot. It could be useful though. Like, I've never found much benefit to these, but I don't deny that they could be good. Getting additional attack and more movement speed is always great. So I'll put them in the B tier, but at best, you're only taking 6 damage. At worst, you're taking 36 damage. So it's a gamble. It's definitely a gamble, but could be very, very beneficial. So that's why I can't deny that there is some benefit to them. So yeah, we do. I would say they're probably around B tier, but next, we got Nimble Fingers Gauntlets. These all look similar. That's why I'm moving them around. But the Nimble Fingers Gauntlets are interesting because it's the only gauntlet that's going to give you increased stats. But, big but here, you have to be a gnome, halfling, or dwarf. So, not classes I play often. Gnomes get +2 dexterity. Halflings and dwarfs gain +1. A +1 is actually really good because if you set your dexterity to 17, this will put it to 18, and then you use an ability score improvement to take it to 20. I'm going to put them in the A tier. That's just, it's really good to get an increased stat. However, very situational. I personally don't, I usually play as elves, humans, Gith maybe. A tier for that. I don't play as gnomes often. I should. I heard they're great. But yeah, halfling's luck is what's good. Next, we got the Poisoner's Gloves. Whenever you deal poison damage, the target must do a Constitution saving throw or become poisoned. And it's a 13 DC Constitution saving throw. This is actually really good because you can use Cloud Kill and reposition it every turn and poison everyone. Poison gives disadvantage on attack rolls. I would say these are pretty good. Poison damage sucks big time in this game, but being able to poison targets. I'm going to put it in the A tier. It's not the worst gloves, or it's not the best gloves, but being able to poison, this is the one saving grace for poison builds. So in terms of just, this brings up that build a whole lot, being able to apply disadvantage to attack rolls. So I have to say that is really, really good. Next, we got the gloves that are going to add radiant damage to your unarmed attacks. So this can be cool because you can do radiating orb builds with this. But unarmed attacks deal an additional 1d4 radiant damage, and you get a level 4 guiding bolt. This is good. I would say most of the gloves I would put in the B tier. I'm going to put these in the A tier because radiant damage is pretty solid of a damage type. There's only a couple places in the game where radiant damage can be reflected towards you. Getting a level 4 guiding bolt to give advantage on attack rolls is nice, but you can do radiating orb builds with this. So pretty fancy. Maybe I'll just put it in the B tier actually. Yeah, we'll throw in the B tier. We got another one here. This is another gauntlet. This is force damage, the best damage type in the game. So 1d4 force damage for unarmed attack. And you get Fear, which is a really great spell. It's like Cone of Cold, it hits in a range. And feared targets will drop everything, and they also get disadvantage on ability checks and attack rolls. Disadvantage on attack rolls is massive, so I'm still going to put it into the B tier. The force damage is the best damage type in the game, so that is really nice, but yeah. Next, we have the Snow-Dusted Monastery Gloves. Same thing, cold damage. You can build around this with like the ring. There's a ring that'll give cold around, or ice around the target, so that works with it. Gives you level 3 casting of Ice Knife. Not amazing, but cold damage is so good, so B tier, maybe A tier. Next, we got the Spell Seeking Gloves. So these are pretty fancy. Whenever you make a spell attack roll, you can spend a sorcery point to gain advantage. This costs 1 sorcery point per spell level slot. Cantrips cost 1 sorcery point. That's okay, but I feel like if you wanted to land like getting advantage on a Cone of Cold, that's 5 sorcery points. On Chain Lightning, that's 6. On Fireball, that's 3. It could be all right. Maybe B. I'm just going to put it in the C tier. I don't love the idea of using up a quickened spell just to be able to cast a Fireball with advantage, but it can be beneficial, so I won't deny it. I'll put it in the C tier, just not D tier. But if you got a cool usage for that, let me know, because I feel like that could be some. I love the Sorcerer, my favorite class, so it could be pretty cool. Next, we got these Stalker's Gloves. So the Stalker's Gloves are, or no, this is Sword Master's Gloves. You gain proficiency with short swords, long swords, and great swords, and you gain a +1 melee bonus. I'm actually going to put this in the D tier because you can play as a Gith to get all the sword proficiencies if you really want them. But if you're using a sword, you should be a sword class. Plain and simple. If there's a place where this is useful, let me know. I just don't think that getting proficiencies is amazing, because if you don't have the proficiency, you probably shouldn't use it. Just from a build perspective, like most builds will have gear that works for them very well. So Next, we got the Stalker Gloves. +1 bonus to initiative. That's huge. Initiative is massive. This can go great on a Druid, because Druids, you roll for initiative at the start of combat, and Druids go into wild shape, they keep their initiative. So this is one of those few items that stays in your wild shape. But in addition, this also gives sneak attacks an additional 1d4 damage, making them a pretty solid option. I would say B tier, because force damage is awesome. Sneak attacks are fun, but adding more damage die is huge. So yeah. Next, we got the Sparkle Hands. Now, the Sparkle gear all has unique looks to it, but not that good. On hit with an unarmed attack, you get 2 lightning charges. That gives you a +1 to attack rolls and deal 1 lightning damage. And when imbued with lightning charges, attacks against metal constructs and foes wearing metal armor gets advantage. Could be beneficial. I'm going to put it in the B tier because it's good, but not something that's like super game changing. So yeah, we'll go with that there. Actually, maybe I'll put it in the C tier. Next, we have the Thunder Palm Strikes. The same thing, thunder damage. You can do reverberation with this. Thunder Wave at a level 3 spell. I would say probably like a B tier option or so. Same as the rest of the damage gloves. So yeah, there's so many monk specific pieces of gear, and thunder damage is just not as good as some of the other damage types. And also Thunder Wave is not really as great as things like Scorching Ray or Guiding Bolt at level 4. So there's better things, but yeah, we got ourselves next there's the Wrinkling Gloves. It's a funny name, but what the Wrinkling Gloves do is it gives you a +1 to sleight of hand, +1 to attack rolls. I'm gonna say probably C tier. +1 to attack rolls, big benefit there. Sleight of hand, it's okay, not like a game changer, but we're starting to get into some of the more powerful items in a moment. So this is the Wondrous Gloves. So this gives you a +1 to your armor class. This is the only piece of gear or gloves, handwear, that will give a +1 armor class. So if all else fails, put this on someone. It also gives you 1 more charge of Bardic Inspiration, so this is perfect on a Bard. We'll give them higher survivability and that Bardic Inspiration. S tier, because +1 armor class is just very underrated. So yeah, we'll go with that there. But next, we got a very cool one. This is the Abyss Beckoners, they're called. So these are absolutely insane. They're very rare. So what they do is you can summon in whenever you summon in your like summons, if you're a necromancer, so necromancer wizard, spore druid, all summoned creatures have resistance to all damage types except psychic. So psychic is the only one that's going to deal normal damage to them. But the big downside, at the start of this turn, it must succeed a wisdom saving throw, or it's driven mad. Just when it's mad, it'll attack the nearest creature, so that can be very dangerous very quickly. You can have someone summon in a bunch of enemies and then Dimension Door or Misty Step away, so there are ways to counter that. But this is actually extremely useful for a variety of reasons. Now, these can be gotten in Act 1, so if you have a Necromancer, you got your best in slot in Act 1. I'm putting these in the S tier because giving your summons resistance to every single damage type is incredibly useful. And Psychic is somewhat common, especially among Mind Flayers, but overall, that is really, really good. So yeah, Abyss Beckoners, S tier. Next, we got the Ballless Glove. So this is another item that is pretty fancy because it gives you +1 to attack rolls, and it gives you Garret. So this is a special action exclusive to the Ballless Gloves. Allows the user to wrap a rope around a target, dealing damage and silencing it. So it Garrets it, and whenever you do this, it has to succeed a DC 14 strength saving throw. It becomes silent, so it can't cast spells, and it can't walk out of the silence, so that's big. And it also takes 3d6 bludgeoning damage per turn, and it can't move. So the Ballless Gloves, honestly, are pretty freaking good, and it's, I would say, an underrated item. I'm going to put them in the S tier because Garroetting and +1 attack rolls can benefit like a lot of classes. Because if there's a spellcaster you see, stack up your spell save DC, cast Garroet, and you're good to go. Next, we got the Bone Spike Gloves. These are also really good. This is great on a Barbarian. It fits the Bone Spike gear set. So your attacks ignore resistance to slashing, piercing, and bludgeoning damage. This is just going in the S tier because, yeah, those damage types, I mean, most martial classes deal those, but being able to ignore resistances just flat out increases your damage. That's really good. A lot of these later items are all really great ones. So next, we got the Gloves of the Tyrant. This is one that I think is okay. I don't know where this build's going because it's for monks. So it gives unarmed attacks an additional 1d4 force damage. It also gives you a +1 to spell save DC, which is fancy because monks don't really cast spells. The 4 elements one does, but they're actions. They don't have that spell save DC benefit. And command is cast as a level 3 spell with this. So they're okay. For a very rare item, I feel like these are not that great, honestly. Like, the additional damage is nice, but you get them so late in the game. It's like one of the final bosses give these. I'm actually just going to put them in the C tier because I just don't think they're that great. The benefits are nice, but yeah, spell save DC, unarmed attacks, and command. It's all over the place. It could be useful. I'm sure there's some uses for it, so let me know in the comments what your thoughts are. But next, we got one of my favorites, the Gauntlets of Hill Giant Strength. +1 to strength saving throws, yippee. But the best benefit is it sets your strength to 23. So, what does this mean? You can dump your strength. And you'll get that +6 to your strength saving or strength attack rolls and everything related to strength. So, easy S tier. Any gloves that set your stats to a certain number is really great. Same as the gloves of dexterity, which we're getting to in a second. Actually, I'll just bring them up right now. Nope, these are the gloves of dexterity. No, wait a second. Yeah, these are gloves of dexterity here. Gloves of dexterity set your dexterity to 18. You can get these early in Act 1. S tier easily. So this is at the Kreshulek. You can get these. You can literally just run straight for these. Setting your dexterity to 18 is huge because that gives you a +4 dexterity. If you're like any class that relies on dexterity for armor class, that's a nice +4 to your armor class. So you can dump dexterity and put it into other points. If you're a class that relies heavily on dexterity, you'd want it to be at least 20 for the +5, but even a +4 dexterity is really great. So S tier easily. Next, we got the Gemini Glove. So cantrips targeting foes and allies can target an additional creature. This unfortunately doesn't mean 6 Eldritch Blasts. It only means 4. It gives you an additional attack. So Ray of Frost will target 2 people, once per short rest. I think these are good. Probably A tier. I want to say S tier, but only A tier. I've used them a lot, and they're just... A cantrip's great, but it's not a spell. So, yeah. Next, we got the Helldust Gloves. These are some of my favorites. So, as I mentioned, there's gloves in this game that'll add additional damage. So, Flawed Helldust gave us a 1d4. These give us 1d6 fire damage. If you're unarmed, it does 1d6 necrotic plus inflicts bleeding. It also gives you a +1 to spell attack rolls and spell save DC. So these work great on like a paladin who can attack with martial attacks and then also do spell attack rolls and spell benefits from spell save DC. It also gives you a +1 to strength saving throws and also gives you the cantrip Rays of Fire, which is basically, it's not a cantrip, it's basically just Scorching Ray. S tier, easiest S tier. These are great. Additional fire damage. This goes great on like a warlock or any class is going to be doing both melee attacks as well as using spells. So really great. Next is the Hraknir. I can't pronounce that. Hracknir bracers. Hraknir. Gives you quickened Mage Hand. You can cast Mage Hand as a bonus action, strength saving throws +1, and telekinesis. Level 5 telekinesis once per short rest. These are pretty good. I would also say A tier, just not as good as S tier. It's funky. Being able to cast a bonus action Mage Hand is nice, and you get these in Act 2, so they're pretty early on in the game. I would say, yeah, S tier or A tier. Next, we got the quick spell gloves. So cantrips that cost an action cost a bonus action instead, once per short rest. I'm gonna put it in A tier. Better than the cantrip gloves because you can target 2 with that. This you can just use it as a bonus action. So it could be the difference between taking out an enemy or not. So I would say A tier for that. Next is the Spellmite gloves. They look the same, but their benefits are majorly different. So when casting a spell that requires an attack roll, so Scorching Ray, Ray of Sickness, etc., you can take a -5 penalty to the roll to add an additional 1d8 damage. That's okay. Like a -5 penalty is actually huge. I'm going to put it in the B tier. I mean, it could work well if you got something that can stack up spell save DC. I'm just going to say B tier, though, for that. Because, yeah, I feel like there is better items out there. So, yeah. Next, we got one of my favorites, the Glove of Soul Catching. These don't really need much of an introduction. You should know what they are. Unarmed attacks do 1d10. So, the best in-slot mage or monk gear. These also look the same as the Vest of Soul Rejuvenation, so they go together perfectly. This gives, yeah, these are incredible. It also gives on unarmed hit, gives you 10 temporary health points. Or no, just 10 health points, not temporary. It just gives you 10 health. And you could also forego that and get advantage on attack rolls and saving throws until the end of your next turn. So Attack once, you get the advantage. You can continue attacking with your bonus actions. And then on your next turn, you'll still have advantage. And then on your next turn, you can get health back. So the soul catching once per turn is incredible. You can keep healing yourself for 10 every turn. And then it also, on top of all these amazing benefits, gives you a +2 to Constitution. These are the best gloves in the game, hands down. However, only beneficial to monks, but they're S tier without a doubt. All the other ones giving just a 1d4, and this comes through 1d10 of force damage, which is the best damage type in the game. Just incredible. But now we got some of the gloves that are require medium armor proficiency. So your lighter classes can't use these, but these are the Blackguard's Gauntlets. Gives you inflict wounds at level 4, strength saving throws +1, and attack rolls +1. These are good, but inflict wounds is like I don't know how I feel about that as a spell. Like, it's a good spell, but yeah, I would say it's probably C tier. Medium armor against spells, they sometimes go together. That'd be good on a cleric. Maybe B tier, C tier. I'll just leave them there. Next, we got the Gauntlets of Surging Accuracy. So it's a unique looking piece of gear here. So when you use Action Surge, gain a 1d4 bonus to attack rolls for the rest of your turn. I'm going to put that in A tier because you would use Action Surge and get that bonus. And fighters will really probably want to have these on equipped. So, yeah. Unwanted Masterwork Gauntlets. So this gives a +1 to attack rolls and 1 to saving throws. The attack rolls +1 is good, but it needs medium armor proficiency. So yeah, I'm gonna probably put them in C tier. I feel like there's better gloves that give similar benefits. So yeah. Next, we got the Gloves of the War Master. So targets have disadvantage in their saving throws against maneuvers and weapon actions, and +1 to spell attack rolls. So better than the last ones. Giving disadvantage on saving throws against maneuvers and weapon actions from the fighter is crazy powerful. So that's S tier because you can do menacing attack and have the target will have disadvantage and possibly frighten them. So that is huge. This video has been 40 minutes. Wow. We're nearing the end here. So we got ourselves, I think I might have copied a few gloves a couple times, unfortunately. But the last one, the Reviving Hands. This is the better version of the Hellrider's Pride that I talked about earlier. So when you heal a creature, it gets Blade Ward. Huge. And when you revive a creature, it gains the effects of Death Ward. So the next time they get hit down to 1 health, they actually stand back up and have 1 health. That's huge. It also gives you a +1 to spells, strength saving throws, and it gives you a level 3 Revivify. So you don't have to take Revivify, which is nice. Frees up a spell slot. S tier. So there it is. Those are all the best gloves in Baldur's Gate 3. That was a huge list. I'll show off the aesthetics of a few of them here just to wrap things up, but this was a long video. There is a lot of gloves in this game. They all have cool appearances. Unfortunately, I have this set of armor on here, but gloves of dexterity just look like leather mitts. Nothing super special about them. I love the gloves of soul rejuvenation. These have the cool glowing on it, and it fits with if we use the vest of soul rejuvenation, as I mentioned, they go together really well and they look cool together. So there's that. A few other gloves that I like is the Helldust gloves. They got the little skeleton on them. That looks pretty cool. So yeah, I like these gloves as well. But anything really in that S tier is going to be fairly solid. And there's the sparkle hands. So very cool. But yeah, that is all the best gloves in Baldur's Gate 3 ranked on a tier list. If you found this video useful, please hit that subscribe button below. This was my longest video to date. Hope you found this fun and useful, and I'll see you all in the next video.